Yeah. I'm attempting a 30-day yoga challenge as well. I'm on day
Nice.
like 15.
That's what's up. I wonder if you guys are doing the same program. Like, there's this like yoga with like I don't know what her name is.
Adrian.
Adrian.
Yeah. Yoga with Adrian. Let's go.
Wow. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Without a Roadmap. This is the show for product folks who don't know all the answers. We plan to share the stories of product folks who get the job done, but are still figuring it out. My name is Yonas.
My name is Cameron. Yonas and I are both PMs at Parlor, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Yemi. So Yemi, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey guys. I'm Yemi Adewunmi. I am the co-founder and chief product officer at Civic Eagle. And at Civic Eagle, we're a B2B SaaS company. Our software helps organizations and their teams that work with policy and government relations. And our tool makes it really easy for them to discover legislation and manage their workflows.
Nice.
So I think Yemi's the first senior chief VP head of products on the show. So honored.
Wow.
We usually talk a whole lot of smack about product leaders and their I think like part of our show is that we try to kind of break down the myth that product folks know what they're doing, and a lot of product leaders kind of pontificate and go on about best practices and things of that nature. But I think like from our conversations prior to having this show, I love that you're very honest and open, that you're still like kind of in the process of understanding and figuring it out yourself, even as a product leader. So I feel like it's a great opportunity to have somebody a little bit more senior come on, and excited to have you.
I'm super humbled by you mentioning this. I mean, in the sense that like I'm self-taught, and so I'm definitely always trying to figuring it out as I'm going. I'm a chief product officer because I am a co-founder, and I guess rose into the role just by nature of like building the app when we first launched. So, and now I am getting to that kind of place where I need to learn more about management in product, and but at the same time we're an early stage startup, and so I still get to have like my hands in the ground and like do the nitty gritty stuff and the wireframing and the user research and all of that. So I guess I get a bit of both worlds. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey so far, and we've been around for 5 years now, and when I first started out, I had no idea what product was, and so now having this like kind of C-suite level, I'm now learning some newer things, like even more things about what that entails and like how that should shift my day to day.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you like where you started off, because it wasn't product, and like the career trajectory and how you ended up in product, and what that process and journey looked like.
Yeah, I mean, I as a career, I stumbled into it, but I think I've always been a product-minded person, or someone who approached problem solving from a like kind of design thinking methodology without knowing it, right? But my initial career path was towards law, and then eventually policy. And I studied political science and went to grad school for public administration, and started my career as a policy analyst at the New York State Legislature. And during that time, I'd gone to college and figured policy was like my passion for sure, and definitely wanted to work in that space. But as I was going through grad school and as I was working in my at my job, I just was growing frustrated with the fact that it is so traditional. The workplace is less efficient than I would have liked. The kind of work I was doing, I often, was got caught in red tape, or had to deal with bureaucracy, or just like the natural slowness of government. And then I was also studying in grad school some of these challenges also as they permeate through the public sector and nonprofits and foundations, and then civic engagement, right? Like we know the statistics about why voter outreach and voter registration and turnout and all of that is low, and engagement is just low in general. And so I've always been passionate about those topics, but at the same time, just working in those industries, I just was also frustrated. And I think at the time, this is like maybe it's like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I think I also just started exploring some of my creative talents. And so I remember I was like really into Instagram when it first came out. And so it kind of inspired, yes,
IG
Instagram.
influencer.
Hey, trying out here. Instagram was cool. And so I really found a passion for photography and design. And so I had my day job, and then I had like in the evenings and weekends, I would teach myself creative skills, photography mostly, and then I transitioned to more like graphic design because I had to like promote myself, promote my photography business. So I learned a lot about creating flyers and using Illustrator and Photoshop and all of that. And then also during this time, my business partner and I, we had been friends. We met in college while we studied abroad. And he approached me at the time. He had an idea about creating a mobile app that would help people understand politics better, help people understand like who to vote for and why they should be voting and engaging in their community and engaging in policy. So he reached out to people that he knew who could help him with this idea. And I was the person that he knew that worked in policy and understood like how a bill became a law. And that's how Civic Eagle was started. He also reached out to one of his best friends, who was our first engineer. He reached out to one of his other friends, who was our first finance guy, and reached out to people in the community around him. And someone connected us with our other co-founder, who is our strategy person, and she's has a lot of experience in policy. So we had this like kind of dream team, I guess you could say, of folks who are on the same like vision of like a better democracy, or using technology to improve democratic outcomes. Like, let's use technology to help connect people with information that's really important. And since then, the app has evolved, and since then I stepped into the role of like the UX designer. I had understood a lot more about graphic design, and I had really loved like technology and playing with apps. And so I became our de facto designer. And as we've grown the business over the past 5, 6 years, I've had to teach myself a lot about product management and how to put together, how to engineer something. I'm not a developer. I don't have technical engineering skills, but understanding what that process is like anyway, and having like how to communicate with engineers, and then of course the design aspect of it, wireframing, UI design. And I think honestly, my background in policy really helped in that transition, because the foundation of design and product is user research. And I found that I had a lot of experience with interviewing people and extrapolating information out of what people say to like make a decision, right? A lot of people, like, just the process of negotiating with stakeholders. That's something that I had to do in my job as a policy analyst, like having to understand what each side of the table wants and how to best facilitate a negotiation and compromise, right? And I think that's almost like the root of making those design decisions when building a product.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I love that that analogy, the comparison of like managing stakeholders and in the public policy realm is like synonymous, or having like a parallel in product. And I love it. It also, it seems like you had such a clear career trajectory to product, even though nothing that you did was directly like product related. It sounds like everything was like a perfect evolution into like the person and like professional you are today. From public policy to design and eventually UX and now product. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I will say it's like alignment. It's a lot of things I couldn't have predicted that just really, opportunities I was blessed with. I knew I wanted to become a designer, but I had no experience. And so I had to, build a small little portfolio. I was able to leverage that into a design, like a junior design role at a web development shop. And then from there, I applied for my first product role. It was the title was product designer, at a startup in New York City, and spent some time there. And then from there, went to another startup that that the role was like a visual designer in a more like, so I got the opportunity to learn on the job while also also working on Civic Eagle, like moonlighting and doing that like nights and weekends. So by the time Civic Eagle started to pick up, I felt more comfortable stepping into that CPO role, because even though I didn't have tons of experience leading a product team, I got to observe it in other job opportunities. And then, yeah, I think I've also been trying to, and something I'm still continuing to work on, is like figuring out like who are the people I can look to for advice and mentorship, or like, you know, I have to get back to that kind of student role of like absorbing and learning about management more. And it's exciting, but it's another layer to this whole job.
Like during like your career path and everything leading up to the CPO role, like I feel like when you're first starting out, especially when you're self-taught like you are and learning on the job, I feel like it's super important to kind of understand how you're getting better or if you're getting better at what you're doing. And so Yonas and myself have been thinking about kind of just different ways of how we can assess ourselves as PMs and all the other hats we wear here at Parlor, and just trying to always keep in mind how can we improve as a PM and as just a person in general. So one thing I've been thinking about recently in terms of assessing myself is, since at Parlor we're a small product team, Yonas and myself are usually the ones writing the stories, doing most of the QA, working with the designs to do all the edits and stuff. I feel like one of the biggest things for me personally to improve upon is how to like improve that process of getting the feature from ideation all the way to it being delivered. And I feel like one of the best ways you can kind of assess yourself is like the time it takes for all that to happen. And so if you can constantly improve, obviously you have to like take into account some features are bigger and smaller than others, some are more complex and all the different backend stuff you have to do. But I feel like one of the things you can do is try to see how you can assess yourself on the speed and quality in which you deliver features over time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As a CPO, it's hard for me to evaluate like, am I doing a great job? Am I, growing? And definitely like measuring velocity on a project or a feature is definitely one way to do it. And we measure our velocity, especially on the dev side, and it's calculated by like how long a ticket is in each stage of the dev process.
Yeah.
On the product side, so my product team comprises of myself and our product manager, Ruby. And the two of us, we don't use necessarily like hard metrics like that, like about how much time. And I think, to be honest, I don't even know where I would start with that, because each feature, everything that we're working on the product side, from, we might be prototyping and testing, like doing usability testing on one feature, and then also like doing like user research on another upcoming feature or something like that. I think one thing that we really do try to evaluate ourselves on is like how we feel about it. Like, how did this go? Like, how did this, in our retrospective, we will look back and be like, how did this go? From a standpoint of like, did we touch all the bases we were supposed to? Like, there's always that time where there's those features, those tasks that you forget a step of, like touching base with the sales team, for example, who probably can give you a little bit of insight about what the user is going to say, or like feedback they've gotten from like meetings that they've had with customer success or like account management type things, right? I think there's just like, in some instances, it's hard to evaluate like that, who needs to be in on each step of the process versus which features and which tasks can kind of like bypass others. Or when you come across like, so as a product team, we'll sync with our CTO about like scoping and scoping and sizing a feature. And we might amend the product requirements based off that conversation, but then forget to go back to the account managers and tell them
Yep.
like, oh, this is changing a little bit. And then by the time
Yep.
it launches, we'll do the soft launch and show the team, and they're like, oh, well, like, so I think that process is inevitable. And I think I would be I think kind of frustrating to evaluate our success just based off of that, because you mess up all the time, right? And it's like,
yeah. It's so hard, like with product, to like assess yourself, because there's so many different factors and things you got to do for every release or every user research thing you do. It's so hard to find one thing that fits.
And it's really unfair because I was just say it was just really unfair because customer teams are held responsible for metrics like customer satisfaction, but there's a million factors factoring into that they're not like capable of changing. So it's like, but product people somehow get away with not having any like really specific metrics that they're held accountable for. I'm still like interested to hear from like some other folks, like what they feel like is a product team's responsibility and like how is it actually quantified. And like from a leader's perspective, like somebody like you who has like a product manager that you manage, like how, it sounds like you're using sentiment as one way to assess like how you feel about the process, but is there any way that you're like quantifying like your actual like the output, or are there like is there anything like metrics wise that you're like trying to track to like measure like how you're producing over time?
And it's interesting. We don't have specific metrics per se. There's some.
Well, we don't either, by the way. So just to preface it, it's just more like I want to hear from other people, like what they're doing to hold themselves accountable. Because like us personally, we have plenty of work and there's responsibilities, but when it comes to like quantifying it and being able to track it over time, like I can't really think of any way, I guess.
And I think it is like you said, I feel like it's more of a feeling, like with product, like when something feels good and something went right, and when there's like a little like that was a little frustrating, or that just didn't like feel right when we were doing that process. You just kind of have that feeling when you're doing it.
Yeah, and I'll preface by saying, like, I don't know if this scales or not. Like, we're a really small team, company team of 11, product team of 2, and I sit at the intersection of sales and engineering in my role, and I handle marketing, I handle product road mapping, and I collaborate, of course, with my PM. But because of that, I actually feel like I'm accountable for everything. Like, I kind of feel like it's me on both ends, right? I'm either not feeding the sales team enough information about what is needed, or what is what we can do, and I'm not doing enough, or I'm not doing enough to communicate to through the engineering side of the product, of like, this is what we need to do, right? And like, I'm also like, I'm at the intersection of the communication, and not that that's how we structure our company either. Like, we have a lot of great communication. Like, we're a very collaborative company. That's one of our main principles, and just as a team, we value transparency, and so there is no like funnel of information, of course. But when I think about like also just being a founder, right? Like, I feel accountable for everything. But I will say that one thing that we do a really good job of, yes, metrics are important, but we get a chance to set those metrics quarterly in the form of our KPIs, our key performance indicators. So every quarter we have a retreat. It's either the first or the second week of the quarter. As a company, we all get together. Pre-COVID, it's our opportunity to actually meet up in person in one city for a week, and we hash everything out. We do a retrospective of the quarter before, what our metrics are, where we left off, and then we always take in consideration what is the current state of affairs. Like, because I think if we set a arbitrary KPIs of like,
next year,
next year, or even just I don't know, like, I mean, and then also just if it's just like number of leads, it's like we don't know what's happening in the world in any given like quarter, let alone any given week, to determine what's going to impact that number. So I think we do a good job of not setting just arbitrary numbers, and we set those numbers together at a retreat every quarter. Every 3 months we check in. And we have general OKRs, so objectives and key results. Like we want to see a higher revenue number. We want to see, and those, like, there is a specific number, it's not just higher, right? We have a set number we want to hit. And we might have an OKR around setting up a specific kind of process. Like we're going to get our marketing workflow done or something like that. And then the departments go in and fill in the KPIs that will then push those results. And so for the product team, for our quarter, it's, for us right now, we're focused on product adoption. So we want to make sure that folks are logging into the app more than, X amount of times per week for X amount of duration of time. For us, that's an appropriate metric because of our software and what it does. We do want people to have time spent on the app. We want referrals. We want people to be sharing information. So we're checking those metrics. We weren't tracking them last quarter because we didn't have those features available quite yet. So we are very good about being practical. And I think that helps us feel like we're moving the ball forward. It's motivational, right? Like if you have metrics that you're never meeting, or you feel like you can't be actually responsible for, then you feel unmotivated you can start to feel unmotivated to push anything forward. But, having reasonable as well as like a little bit ambitious, a bit of ambition. I think us being able to reevaluate our KPIs every quarter is an opportunity to really feel like, okay, what is feasible with what we have, what's going on in the world, what's going on with our customers, what's going on with our team, like what is feasible for us to do right now. And I think that's how we evaluate our success over time.
Yeah. So I think as startups, since we are dealing with limited information, that is kind of how you have to play it. It's like it's really difficult to plan out years in advance, or like even the entire quarter, to a like degree of granularity when you don't even know if you're gonna be in business still. So it's really interesting, and thankfully now we're starting, as Parlor starts to gain a little traction, and we have some metrics to play around with and use for future planning and for like creating deadlines and expectations. It does make things a little bit more exciting, but there is also now pressure because we have like these guideposts that have been set up and established, and it's like, okay, now we know where we're coming from, where we have to go if like we're following some sort of upwards linear path, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been interesting for us, like with our product roadmap. And so I think that's another way to measure success is like, okay, did you release and deploy the features that you wanted to deploy?
Yeah.
And that's like a big one. And I think that's one thing that for us as an early stage company is like, there's so many directions we want to go in, and like there's so many opportunities for enhancing features or creating new ones, and so that's one thing that I think as a team we are, we're iterating on that process. Like, what does that look like for us to clean up our backlog? Like, how consistently can we do that? And I think that's another way to also measure, like, how what's the progress on the backlog? What's happening there? And I think that's something that I've had to learn. I know it's something that I've had to learn. I haven't been able to get any like direct advice from an expert or a mentor or anything about that. And I think it really does depend on your personal workflow and like how you and your team want to manage all the ideas and features that could come through, and when to schedule them out on the roadmap, and then hold yourself accountable to getting them done sprint by sprint.
Like, I'm curious, like, since we're all actually self-taught product managers here, or like product people, like I'm curious, like just to have hear from you guys of what you think being self-taught means, and like what are the best ways to kind of get to a point where you're comfortable in your skills and assessing your own skills. And like, I think there's no course, or actually maybe at Northeastern, they got like the co-op programs and like schools are starting to catch on that, product management's a good career for them to have some sort of coursework around, but most don't. Mine didn't. And, you know, everything I would say that I'm self-taught, but it's like, what does that mean? Like at what point are you able to kind of like verify that you got the skill set that you need to like get that product manager role? Because most of us don't have certificates. Even if we did, I don't think a certificate would, you know, really say that much, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right. We're all frauds.
So it's like,
right.
So what did you do what was your self-teaching process like? I'm curious, because it might be helpful to some people who are in that process, and, you know, especially getting to the point where you're a product leader. Like, I'm a self-taught product manager, but it's like, you know, it's a whole nother level when you're leading product decisions and strategy. It's kind of
That's a good point. I was gonna say the School of Hard Knocks taught me, but no, I think
no, that's fair. That's valid.
There's like two sides of it, right? There's like the soft skills and the hard skills. And I think on the product side, the soft skills matter just as much as the hard skills, if not more, right? Because you can find tutorials on how to use Sketch to like design an app, or you can you can kind of enroll in products courses, Coursera and Udemy and stuff like that, or like. But I think the thing about building a product, and I guess I might conflate this with founding a company too, and being an entrepreneur in general, because that's my perspective, right? Like I didn't just become a product leader to be a product leader. I guess I became a product leader to build a company and to build a tool that like did something specifically, right? And I would say, like, even if I didn't have this company, I probably would have stumbled into some sort of product type of role, because I think it is like the most exciting industry and career out there. But I'm biased.
I'm with you.
Yeah, you're in good company.
But I think the soft skills really does come from, like, you can't really teach that, right? Like, you kind of have to you have to understand how people operate. And so sometimes I'm reading things that are like philosophy based, and you know, I read things. I'm staring at a book right now on my bookshelf. I'm looking at Hooked by Nir Eyal, User Friendly by Cliff Koyang, and The Innovator's Dilemma, and High Output Management. Like, these are books that they're not necessarily about products, but they're about people and how people adopt things and how
they think.
And then how processes are made, right? I think a lot of people assume that technology is only made in one direction, and it's not. And it does take some time to learn that. And I had to learn that on the job. And I mean, of course, there's YouTube videos and things like that. But yeah, I think it's just like a natural curiosity, because what I do see is that product is everywhere. Product isn't just in this tech industry. It's in healthcare. It's in finance. It's in education, especially education, right? It's everywhere. And we all know about it. But what we've done is been able to like become product leaders by nature of like kind of synthesizing all of those lessons into a job, and with a specific objective of building something. So I think we're all product people, to be honest, deep down. And it's kind of like out there, but I think especially as people of color, I think marginalized communities are the best type of product people to take on these roles and build things, because that, again, going back to people and how things work, like, you know, people that have had to adapt and like take on challenges and, you know, transform and almost be chameleons in a world. Those are the type of people that like make products. Like, those are the types of things that matter when you make decisions. So this is something I've been stewing on a little bit lately. Like, damn, like, yeah, there aren't that many minorities in products, but there also aren't that many product roles in general, like relative to like
it's still like a developing like field, industry, whatever you like, job you want to call it, whatever.
Exactly. So as it grows, I hope that there's more minorities in this field, because like we are the best to do it, to be honest. But again,
like you said, the School of Hard Knocks. I feel so. I think an interesting like note is that Civic Eagle is predominantly like POC management team. And that's something that you see very rarely in the tech space, and it's very refreshing. And I think that it's interesting because like, I feel like that, like you said, we are kind of uniquely positioned to do this kind of work. We have the people skills in a lot of ways. And we've also been able to, I think the code switching is a huge part of it. And it factors hugely into like not only the, like for being a product person, but being a manager of people. And, you know, I think it's just because we have to be super flexible. We have to, you know, be able to adapt really quickly and, you know, create opportunities for ourselves. And I think it's really impressive what you guys have done. But yeah, I'd love to hear from your perspective, like what that's been like, because this is probably the first time you're working at a company where it's run by predominantly Black folks, which, yeah, I wonder, does it feel different? Does it?
It doesn't. And I, you know, I understand I definitely, you know, don't take for granted the like significance of what we've built and how we've built it. So we're a founding team of 4 Black folks, 2 men, 2 women. Currently, as our team stands, we have 11 people full time, 6 women, 5 men. And the engineering team, even like outside of product, like outside of myself, we have an engineering team that's like 70% women. Wow. I think it's like 3 guys and anyway, don't quote me on the numbers. But I say that to say like diversity is, I don't know, it's not like we necessarily went out and like we're specific about building the company this way. Again, when we started the company, Damola, who's the CEO, and he really had the core idea of starting Civic Eagle. He reached out to his network and you know, we all were aligned on what we're building. And I think that's most important is like alignment on culture and what you want to build together. And then I think that naturally the diversity kind of happens because people are attracted to you and your company. I just you know, we hired our PM when I went through that hiring process. It was my first time hiring someone. And I did not have a shortage of applicants. I did not have a shortage of like diverse talent that applied. And I think it's just by nature of like having, being founders of color, like attracted other people of color and other people who supported that too. It's not like we're an all Black team either. Like it's people who are aligned in what we're building in general. So I think that's the bigger takeaway. I've actually worked at another company that was predominantly people of color, a company called Jopwell. They do hiring and recruitment for people of color, and it just feels like you can be yourself. Like it just feels like you can like. And I'm not saying like yeah, and it's hard, right? Because I don't want to say like everybody who's a person of color feels a certain way or feels the same way, but you still have to show up professionally. You still have to get your job done. You still have to like do all these things, but you kind of can skip some of the like fake conversation or uncomfortable conversation and again, sorry, not to say that like you can't have fake conversations when you're around people that look like you. Like you may still have to like fake the conversation about somebody's child or somebody's like dog or like their partner. Like
I mean, y'all see Molly's firm at in Insecure. Like, you know,
Molly's the worst.
It's very messy.
I was beef.
Like, I want no parts. I want no parts of that, but I hope it's not the same.
It's just I think it's just one less thing to think about, but you still have, I mean, working with people in general, like just, you know, regardless of race or where you come from, is just, just gotta.
It's part of it.
Just part of it is working with people. So.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Cool. Like the culture fit piece that you mentioned and people just like naturally gravitating towards you because of your like current construction. It makes me think like, you know, maybe if we build it, they will come. It'll kind of like usher in this new wave of, you know, like this is us hiring for culture fit. Like, you know, if this is offensive to you, then, you know, I guess you can look at historically how culture fit is impacted the rate of hiring POC at predominantly white companies. And I think you guys might be flipping the script. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
You
But
love to see it.
indirectly, let the SEC know indirectly.
Yonas, the feds.
Yeah. The feds have definitely been tuning into this show. But I have one question, kind of off that, about the hiring process. Like, given that you're a self-taught product person, you know, and you're out here trying to hire somebody, I don't know if you were looking for an experienced hire or not, but like, what was that process like? You know, trying to find somebody and like define a role that you yourself might not have like complete, like, you know, covering or bearing on what it should entail.
Yeah, that was an interesting process. So last fall, I my company, we raised our seed round. We raised 1.3 million, and we knew that we were going to spend. Thank you.
Hey.
We were going to spend that money, part of that money, on like growing the team, of course, and it was really like starting out. I think the first step I had to take was evaluating like what we needed in a PM. And as you all know, we kind of touched on this, like PM, like product spans a wide variety of, I guess, tasks and responsibilities. Like you can be a PM or a product person. And I consider PM not necessarily just like the actual like project management is part of PMing, but there's also like user research and usability testing, and there's analysis, right? And the checking the data and monitoring the data. And then there's like the product requirements and making sure that all of the tasks and features are ready for development. And and then there's, of course, on the design side of it is like the UX design and the UI and stuff like that. So I kind of pretty much wrote a list of all the different things that are part of what we needed on the team. And I circled the things that I was really strong at. And it was more of the product marketing leaning side, like setting the roadmap, but and engaging with users, of course, but more so like how we make improvements to the design on the front end and making it more usable, and then being able to market that and make that polish and then synthesize that with our brand, right? Making sure that that's synced up. What I knew I needed in a product manager was someone to handle more of like the product requirements and the analysis and the tracking and the share responsibilities and research. So I wrote all these kinds of things. I made a list, and then that's how I derived the job description. I think if you just make a job description that's like product manager, like you have to, like, one person can't do everything. Like it's just not, you're not gonna get a real applicant, right? You're not gonna get a real candidate that's gonna be honest with you, right? To be real, people enjoy certain things and other people don't. And if you want, and that's important for us, is we put our people first. Like that is one of our company values, is being people first. And we want people that are going to be comfortable in the role and succeed at the role. Like I don't want to put somebody in the role that's not 100% happy with what I'm going to be evaluating their success on. So once I put the job description out, what it looked like was like there was pretty much like 4 domains, is what I called it, like 4 domains of the PM role: user research, tracking and analysis of the data, testing, and like the project management type stuff of like, getting features organized and sent over to dev. So when I interviewed for those things, I asked the candidates specifically about those areas. I didn't necessarily need to ask about product marketing or design and things like that. So I think just being very specific about what your company needs and what your team needs in a person, and being reasonable about it. Like don't expect to find like this perfect unicorn who's going to come into and fill all the role. And then honestly, like Ruby is a godsend. Like she loves doing all the things that were on that list. Like she loves research. She loves like she told me she loves investigating, and like that is probably one of the things that's hard to find in a PM. Somebody who just loves to tinker and just like break things and figure out like where the process is wrong. And so, yeah, just really fortunate to be able to find someone who is also passionate about what we're building, right? The thing about our company and the advantage of being like a mission-driven company is that people self-select to be a part of what we're doing. Like, we're not going to get the people that want to work at Facebook or the people that want to work at like an e-commerce platform, right? Like, we have people that are working on improving democracy, and they're really good at what they do. You know, like they're really good at their technical skill, and then they have like this passion for what we're building as a product. Yeah. So I love our team. Our team is just, it's been you know, we've had a good run so far, and I'm really excited about like our focus on like company culture, and I guess product culture too. Like it kind of manifests itself in how we approach our customers and how we talk to our users on the app, and how we conduct our product development flow, like the way that we reach out to customers and show them mock-ups and use Parlor to demonstrate, you know, like exclusive features, you know.
Yeah. Well, quick side note, Civic Eagle was one of the first beta users of Parlor's free product. So shout out to Yemi. She clearly cares about, you know, user feedback deeply, and Ruby as well. I know Ruby's on there. And yeah, that was actually how we got connected. They reached out when we were looking for beta testers, and now that we're on the free product, they're very active, and we love to see it.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, part of it is like product culture. I don't know if I've used that term before. Like, I don't know if it came to me now, just in thinking about like how we approach how we're building the product. We know we're not going to have everything, and it's like tools like Parlor, and it's tools like, or processes where we do try to reach out to our customers as much as possible. And it's hard when you're young. It's hard when you have like only 10 daily users a day. Like, it's hard to get feedback because people are only on for, you know, a few minutes. And like, it's the little things like, you know, adding interstitials onto your app, or like, you know, checking in personally with them and calling them, or showing them mock-ups. Like when we released our latest kind of revamp of our general like experience, we labeled it a whole new version pretty much. And before we launched that, I showed the mock-up and the prototype to our customers like for 3 months, I think. And pretty much because I was trying to wait for the engineers to be ready to take on the new version, right? Like, that's part of product planning, is like the design might be ready, you know what you want to build, but like engineering team isn't ready for it because they're still working on something else, right? So that is something that I think that might be a little bit unique in our culture and how we started our app, was that we spent a lot of time testing out the functionality and the UX, because we were reaching out to customers early and showing them what was happening and iterations of it. And so now Parlor, that we have it, like we can do that kind of at scale, like directly on the app. But it's that kind of like, I think, company culture or product culture that it comes from our company culture of like being very transparent and being about the people and what we're doing. And so, yeah.
And it's so important at the early stages, even when it is just those 10 users, like you're going to get the most like important feedback from them. And that's part of the reason why we recently launched the free version of Parlor, is that, you know, we kind of put it on the back burner just because we had a lot of other priorities. And then when, you know, everything kind of shut down, our sales pipeline slowed down with the coronavirus, and, you know, companies being a little more financially insecure, you know, but also for the fact that like we think that this is super valuable to companies at this stage during this time, and, you know, especially for early stage companies, is getting that early feedback and using that to kind of build out the future of your product. And like those early voices can prevent you from doing the wrong thing that costs you all this money and resources and engineers time, and, you know, could you know, unfortunately, like that's usually what you know turns you know, fails businesses, is running out of money because they spent time doing the wrong thing.
Yep.
Cool. All right, this was awesome. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're super busy. I'm sure everyone's super busy, but this was super exciting to have you on and to hear everything you said.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I really enjoyed talking to you all as usual. Like, I love jamming with y'all. It's good to talk to products people because nobody else really quite gets it. Like, nobody quite understands all the nuances.
Right.
We're always happy to have a chat with you, Yemi. Would love to make this a regular thing.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it for sure.
All right. Well, best of luck with you. Everything going on over at Civic Eagle and Enview, and we I hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too.